Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse, and today we're talking about providing for birds in winter. I'm giving this a take two because on Saturday, my camera gave out and just died in the middle of the broadcast. So I've got a temporary new camera here for the moment. So it might look a little bit different today than normal as I transition here to some new equipment. But as always, we love to know who's on. You can say hi in the comments. If you have any questions, you can throw those in there too. And we love to know what kind of things you're seeing. So absolutely throw those into the comments as well. And we'll get started here with providing for birds in winter. So birds are just like everybody else. They are like all other wild animals, and they need food, water, shelter, and the proper habitat in order to survive. And that's all year. It's not just in the winter, it's all the time. But there are things that you can do in the winter specifically to help them survive and thrive. And so that's what we're really focusing on today. The first being food, of course. If you're watching this, you probably feed some wild birds or you have interest in it at least. And birds in general, as far as the wild birds in our backyards that we are normally talking about here in the spring and summer, in general, they eat a large variety of insects. So the insects are plentiful. They will use them to feed their young. So they eat a lot of insects in the spring and summer, but there's not a lot of insect activity out there right now. And so they switch their diet. Those birds that do stay here in the wintertime will switch their diet to things like seeds and berries. So, in order to best provide food for birds in the winter, you want to set up some bird feeders that have some kind of a mix of sunflower seed, Niger, suet, peanuts. All that is really good. Those are all high in fat and in protein, and that can help the birds give them the calories that they need really to stay warm. And then also shrubs and trees that are berry producing. So not something you can start providing right now, but something to keep in the back of your mind as we get into the gardening season. And if you're looking for some things to add to your yard, some berry producing trees and shrubs are a great way to attract some birds like cedar waxwings or those robins that stay over the winter. So a couple different things you can do. So here's a couple birds here enjoying the food. This is the cedar waxwing here on the left, enjoying a little berry. And then there's a couple of blue jays enjoying a nice little bird feeder. And so when you do put out seed in your bird feeder, the seed does make a difference. So I've got a couple pictures here. The seed on the left has a lot of little yellow stuff in it. It's got a lot of the millet are the little tiny round seeds, the white millet. Looks like there's some canary seed in there. There's some milo, which are those round little brown seeds. And the birds don't even eat the milo. They just throw that on the ground. And they will eat the millet. It looks like there's both white and red millet in that mix, but they tend to throw that on the ground too and go for the things that are high in fat. So that's going to be the sunflower seed. If there's peanuts in there, they're going to go for that. And then they tend to throw everything else on the ground, which can be kind of messy. So you want to get something that doesn't really have a lot of that little yellow stuff in it. Even though they'll eat the millet, they'll eat some of the cracked corn that's in there. They tend to save that for last. And you want to kind of stay away from any of those blends that have the milo in it, which are these little brown round seeds. The birds just don't eat those. So you want to get a mix that has a lot of sunflower seed in it, a lot of peanuts. Basically, the more appetizing it looks for you, the more appetizing it will be for the birds. So keep that in mind. And if you're not sure what kind of seed blend to get, you can never go wrong with just straight black oil sunflower seed or sunflower hearts, which are the inside of the sunflower seed. That will give you the most diversity on out of every type, any type of one seed. So the most birds will eat sunflower seed if you're just going to do one type of seed. Then there's also seed logs. So the birds love the seed logs. This is the same idea as providing a bird feeder with seed, except it's all compact and in log form, and it takes the birds a longer time to go through it. So they have to perch on the feeder and then they peck away at it. So whereas in my backyard, I have to refill my feeders just about every day. With these seed logs, depending on the bird activity and the type of seed log I have out, these will last more like a week or longer. So this is a good thing to use, especially in the winter months. If you don't want to go trudging through the snow to refill your bird feeders, these seed logs last quite a long time. So those are really nice. And as far as suet goes, you can't go wrong with a suet feeder that has the paddle tail on it. And the paddle tail is this projection that sticks out beneath the suet feeder, beneath the suet cake, I guess I should say. And the birds will cling onto the little mesh of the suet feeder, and then they use this tail prop to support themselves, to make themselves upright. And it just gives them more stability when they're feeding, and it's great for the larger woodpeckers. Like I've got a northern flicker here on the left, and then a pileated woodpecker on the right. So if you're looking to attract just little woodpeckers like the downy woodpecker, just a typical suet cage is fine. But if you want the larger woodpeckers like pileated woodpeckers, red-bellied woodpeckers, the flicker here, can't go wrong with the paddle tail suet feeders. Those are our best sellers. And then water. Water's another simple thing all year round you can do to attract birds. It's really easy in the spring and summer just by putting out a bird bath. There are heated bird baths in the winter months. So there's heated bird baths where everything is enclosed in the bird bath, the whole heating element. And then there's also bird bath heaters that look like this. Here's one right here that you can put in a bird bath you might already have. The thing is, depending on how strong your winter is, you want to be careful about what kind of bird bath you leave outside. If you have one that's glass or concrete or pottery, and you leave that out in the winter and the water inside freezes and thaws too many times, that can cause the bird bath to crack. So you want to keep your, as far as bird baths go, you want to have one that is made of plastic or metal, something that can be left out in the wintertime. And these heated bird baths are great because they operate on a thermostat, so they don't run continuously, but they just run enough to keep the water unfrozen. So they keep it just above the freezing point. Same with most of the bird bath heaters that you put inside the bird bath. There is one that's less expensive that will just run all the time, that doesn't operate on a thermostat, but you're better off getting one that does operate on a thermostat so it doesn't run continuously, and it just runs when it needs to. So we've got all of those here at the store. And then there's shelter, of course. So we talked about food, water, and then shelter. And shelter can be provided in the spring and summer months a lot with birdhouses. And birds will use the birdhouses in the winter too, sometimes to just to stay out of the elements. But what we sell a lot of, and what a lot of people put out for those winter months, are these little roosting pockets. And you can see there's a group of 3 here on the right-hand side. They're a little too shallow for the birds to nest in general in the spring and summer, but they'll use them in the winter to stay out of the rain and the snow and the cold. So you can put several of those all together in one spot to help give the birds a little bit more shelter. And then on the left here is a screech owl poking its head out of a screech owl box. So if you have larger boxes out, like a woodpecker house or a screech owl house, you might find that birds are going in there as well in the winter months, even squirrels, to stay out of the elements. And then here's the roosting pockets again. So you can put them all together. You can put them close together. Birds aren't really territorial this time of the year as far as the little songbirds go. They're not mating yet. So you can put them all together in a little group to get the birds all roosting together. Then there's also what are called roosting houses. And the roosting houses are different because inside they have these perches like this. And the idea with roosting houses, kind of the same idea as the roosting pockets, except it provides even more room for the birds. So we've got some long ones like this. We also have some that are basically the same size as a bluebird house, but inside there are rows of perches, and those birds can go in there and they can sit on the perches and again kind of cuddle up next to each other and stay out of all of the cold and the snow. So these are nice too because this one in particular is called the convertible roosting house, and it allows you to turn it into a birdhouse in the spring. So you get kind of dual purpose with it. So roosting houses are just a little bit more sturdy. They can hold more birds, so they last longer. And then habitat is also important. So if you have kind of a barren landscape without many trees or shrubs around, you might find that your bird activity goes down in the wintertime because there's not a lot of places for the birds to roost in, to stay warm in, that kind of a thing. So sometimes people will put out brush piles. You can make your own brush pile with sticks in the yard. People will take their Christmas trees, if you have a Christmas tree, a real Christmas tree, and when you're going to get rid of it, you can stick that in the yard until the spring, and that's a good place for the birds to cuddle in and to stay out of the cold, and it'll give them some protection from things like Cooper's hawks or sharp-shinned hawks that might be coming into the yard to try to get a meal. But habitat is important, so you want to make sure that you do have a bunch of different plants, if possible, for the birds to stay in while it's cold. And there are a lot of birds that do stay here all winter long. There are some that are migratory and we won't see again until April, May, June, but some stay all year round. There's quite a few that stay all year round, so you can still get a really good diversity of birds, even in the winter months. Goldfinch, we get lots of questions about goldfinch and when they go south and when they return. And although they flock around in different ways, we do have them here all winter long. They just aren't that bright gold. So right now they are more of an olive color. So we do have them here in the winter, and you can see them coming to your Niger feeders, especially if you've got that finch favorite mix. The goldfinch really like that, and so do some of the other birds like chickadees and red-breasted nuthatches and everything like that. But we do have goldfinches here in the wintertime. You might also see in the winter pine siskin. They come down here to hang out in the winter months, so we do have them this time of the year. They look like a goldfinch with more stripes. They've got some yellow on their feathers. They'll come to Niger feeders. They're also known to have a very sharp bill. If you can kind of compare the two, the goldfinch don't have nearly as sharp of a bill as the pine siskin do, but you might see them coming to your Niger feeders also in the winter. Also, sometimes we have eruptive years of different birds that will come down here for the winter time, and redpolls are one of those birds. The common redpoll here is one we get here and there depending on the year. Sometimes we'll have years where they are everywhere. This year there's really not any to speak of, at least here in Western New York where I am, but redpolls will have these eruptive years and they will come to Niger feeders in the wintertime. House finches, common bird right now in your backyard. They will come to Niger feeders. They like black oil sunflower. They love safflower. They seem to really love that. Anytime I put safflower out in my yard, I get a whole bunch of house finches and cardinals. You might also see purple finches. Purple finches are a little bit bigger, and they're more common in the wintertime here than they are in the spring and summer at feeders. And the males are a real raspberry type of color, and the females are brown and white stripes, but they just have kind of more of a bold patterning than the house finches do. But both of those are around here in the winter. And some other eruptive birds we get here and there are going to be things like crossbills that have the crisscrossed beaks. They will sometimes come to feeders. They really love to eat the seeds out of pine cones, so look for them in pine trees. Things like pine grosbeak sometimes flow down further south in the wintertime, not so much this year for us at least. And then evening grosbeak too. They will eat the same kind of things as the cardinals do. So if you have a feeder out that the cardinals can feed from, that's perfect for the evening grosbeak. They like open platform feeders, something with a lot of perching room, and they'll eat sunflower seed and safflower. So they are pretty rare, but here and there we hear reports of people getting them. And of course, cardinals, male and female cardinals, here all winter long. They look really beautiful with a snowy backdrop. And you might get things like red-breasted nuthatch or white-breasted nuthatch. Red-breasted nuthatch are more common here in the winter than they are in the spring and summer, but we do have them here year-round. But they all come to feeders in the winter as well. They love the suet, they love peanuts, the sunflower hearts, and sunflower seed. So keep an eye out for them as well. And dark-eyed junco, you can find them underneath your feeders. They come every year, so they are a sign of winter when they start showing up here in the fall. And they're gray with the little pink bill and that white belly, and we'll have them here through the early spring. Some people get them year-round, but in general, they do go further north in the spring to mate and breed. Then there's the thrushes. Thrushes are things like our robin, our American robin, our bluebird. Some of them go south for the winter, but we do have some that stay all year round, and they will eat a lot of berries in the wintertime. They're not going to eat a lot of seeds, but if you have some kind of a feeder out that has mealworms in it, you might get them coming to it. Or something like our bugs, nuts, and fruit log, which is really popular. You might get the bluebirds, especially coming to something like that in the winter months. They also really like the water. So if you have a heated bird bath out and you are lucky enough to get bluebirds in the spring and summer, that's a really good way to keep them coming in the winter months because they do love those heated bird baths. And then there's predators you might see in your yard, and we're getting reports of predators like this every day coming to people's backyards. Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, they're very common in the winter. They'll come to backyard feeding stations because they are predatory. They are looking for birds to eat, and they are plentiful, and they are around, and there's really not too much you can do to keep them from coming, except take your feeders down for a few days if you've had a lot of hawks and you are getting upset about the amount of birds they're taking. The best thing you can do is take your feeders down for a few days, let the hawks disperse, and then put your feeders back up. There are other types of birds that aren't going to be backyard birds, but birds that are around that you can keep an eye out for, especially if you are out by any kind of open fields. Keep an eye out for snow buntings. They'll sometimes form big flocks in the winter and fly around, especially in big fields. So if you're going out to look for short-eared owl or northern harrier, anything like that in some of those fields during the day, keep an eye out for snow bunting. And also horned larks will be found in the same type of habitat. And no big reports yet of snowy owl, at least here. But this is another bird that will sometimes have big eruptive years where they're super common down here. Other years, like last year, we really didn't have any coming through. So we'll see if we get any reports of snowy owls. So far, there's really not much to write home about, but it ebbs and flows. So this is another winter visitor for us. And then if you spend any time by the water, this is another one. Long-tailed duck you can find by bays and Lake Ontario. If you're in the Western New York area, I'm sure Lake Erie has them too. If it's not, when it's not frozen over, look for long-tailed ducks in those spots. And then as far as making sure your yard has the best feeder setup for winter, these are the things I would recommend to give you the biggest diversity. First being, you want some suet. Suet has a lot of fat in it, so that's really great for birds to give them the calories that they need in the winter months to help give them a leg up, to help keep them warm, keep that body fat going. Peanuts are another great thing that you can feed. Woodpeckers love peanuts. The blue jays, nuthatches, chickadees, titmice, they all love peanuts. And then there's the Niger seed. You never know what you'll get at your Niger feeders in the winter months. Goldfinches being the most common, but then there's also those pine siskins. A redpoll might fly in, you never know. So Niger seed is absolutely great in the winter months. And then something for some kind of a seed mix, whether it be black oil sunflower seed, just straight, or a mix that contains sunflower seed, some kind of a feeder that has a lot of perching room that will provide that for the birds is wonderful. And then water, some kind of a heated water feature is fantastic. It never gets hot. The water never is like a sauna or anything like that, or a hot tub. It's nothing like that. It's just warm enough to keep the water unfrozen. So that is our recommendation. My recommendation. That's us here at the Birdhouse. What we would recommend for the winter months. If you've got any comments on things that work well for you, you can put those in the comments section. And we'd love to know what kind of things you're seeing here. We've had a few snowy days. We've had kind of a snowy week here. So the birds are definitely eating. They're coming to the feeders quite a bit. TR's Place says hi. Steel Monkey says good morning, everyone. Once again, another great show. Lynn is on and says good morning. Do the roosting houses need to face in a certain direction? Thanks. That is a good question. I am not totally sure. So usually when we're talking about roosting or birdhouses in general, they say to face them east for nesting. I'm not sure if the roosting, if it makes any difference. I would keep it facing east the same way that I would my nest boxes, but I don't know if it makes a difference because they're not nesting in it. They're just kind of using it to stay out of the elements. I'm not sure if it makes a big difference. We'll have to look that up. I'm not totally sure. Dina says, good morning. Had about 7 plump robins at the bird bath yesterday. So although some of them do go south, they don't all go south. I saw a nice big flock of robins a couple weeks ago here. And so it looks like Dina's got some in her yard as well. Okay, it looks like that is everybody's comments and questions. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back Saturday with another broadcast. And until then, have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.